Hey guys, welcome back here to Intuitive Angling, and appreciate you guys swinging by the channel and spending some time with me. And guys, today we're going to be talking about why bass fishing over the past 10 years is tougher than it's ever been, why it's gotten so tough over the past 10 years. And if you have fished longer than 10 years, especially you guys that have been fishing 20 or 30 years, you can attest to the fact that bass fishing is more difficult and tougher than it's ever been right now, despite some of the illusions that it's not. We're going to get into that also, and really offer some suggestions about how we can fix this and how we got to this point to begin with. So we're going to get into that in today's episode. And also, guys, you can see I'm out here in the truck in the dark. I'm actually up here in St. Louis, Missouri, in downtown St. Louis. Kim and Owen are at a concert tonight. I drove them up here, and I'm just waiting out here, you know, in front of the concert to pick them up when they get done in a couple hours. So thought it'd be a good time to do today's video, because at the time you see this video tomorrow morning, I'll be at the lake, so I didn't have time to film it in the morning there. I'm also got a quick reminder, guys. Spring is here, man. Time to get fishing. If you guys are looking to get stocked up on your fishing tackle, I'll put my Tackle Warehouse link in the description of this video. Tackle Warehouse has got a bunch of good clearances and sales going on. If you guys would like to use my link to get that tackle, great way to support Intuitive Angling. We really appreciate that. And also, guys, as usual, thank you very much for everybody that's hit that subscribe button here to Intuitive Angling, joined as a Patreon member, joined as a channel member. Big thank you for being my family. Okay, I talk about this on and off, but I got thinking about it the other day, and about the undeniability about how fishing has gotten so much tougher over the past 10 years. And this isn't just a one-off. This isn't something that just is unique to me. Everybody I talk to that has fished very long says the same thing. It doesn't matter what part of the country they're in. I've got friends that live all over the country. They all say the same thing. And one of the things that I have noticed, and one of the reasons I wanted to do this video, is that, you know, I've done on the water lessons for years now, and I also fish a lot in the wintertime. And prior to about 5 years ago, especially, it's like on a typical, you know, fishing trip that I would take to anywhere in the Missouri Ozarks here, between like December and February, jerkbait fishing primarily, maybe a little bit of swim bait and A-rig. But on the average, you know, just an average day going out there, we'd probably catch, I don't know, 10 to 20 keepers, 15-inch keepers, and we'd have, you know, 13 to 16 pounds, just on an average day of fishing like that. Guys, I have noticed over the past 5 years that those numbers have been cut in half or worse. Instead of getting 15 to 20 keepers a day on average now, a lot of times you're averaging 2 or 3 keepers a day and not even getting the limit. And this is not anything it's just unique to myself. A lot of people say this and have seen this. And what you have had is, and we talk about the illusion a little bit here, but what you've had is the technology and the technological advances that we have had in bass fishing have enabled anglers to exploit and find these areas that were normally sanctuaries for fish. Forward-facing sonar, all the live scope and that type of stuff. Those anglers they've transferred out off the bank or in less than 20-foot water. They're out chasing those roamers that have not gotten any pressure over ever in the history of fishing, and they're still catching fish. So what happens now is, when you have a tournament, for example, and the weights are decent in a tournament, it creates this illusion that the lake is overall, it's good fishing and it's healthy, and it's not. Because if you took that technology away from them and had to put them in places where people have been fishing the past 40 or 50 years, they wouldn't catch crap. They wouldn't. And a lot of the anglers like myself that don't use forward-facing sonar, we have seen the depletion in the traditional areas that the bass live in. It's like the bass are not there. They're dead. They've been either, you know, killed from guys catching them, or, you know, moved out off the bank, or whatever it is, but they're just not there like they used to be. And fishing has just gotten tough as a result overall across the country. Now, here's the reasons for that I want to get into. First of all, we have 10 times the anglers on the water now than we had 20 or 30 years ago, at least. The fishing pressure has just exploded. And this is one of the things I haven't really understood. I guess it's just it's a product of population growth, because fishing isn't easy. I mean, bass fish, it's not easy to catch bass on public bodies of water, but people gravitate towards fishing and people like it. And, there's been an advent of so many new tournaments. There's the college and high school stuff. There's more tournament circuits than ever, more people than ever. And fish are just getting more fishing pressure, and fish are not stupid. I mean, the largemouth bass lineage has been on this planet for over 3 million years, and you don't survive on this planet for 3 million years being stupid and not being able to adapt. So these bass have reacted to that fishing pressure by adapting to it, and the ones that are left that haven't been killed and eaten are simply getting more wary and smarter. They're evolving to get smarter, to avoid lures, and they're evolving to get away from those type of areas that normally they have been in the past. That's one aspect of it that cannot be denied. And I don't see it going backwards. I mean, as far as that fishing pressure goes, in a good example, I'll give you guys a prime example. It's like I've been fortunate enough to be able to fish professionally for 45 years. So I've had a chance to be on the lake all across the country, all week long, not just on the weekend like a lot of people get a fish, but I get a fish during the week a lot of times. And prior to about 5 or 10 years ago, like I'm talking about, when I would go to the boat ramp on any lake here in Missouri during the week, say Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday, there wouldn't be anyone at the ramp. There might be 1 or 2 dudes that are retired or something like that. But when you pulled up to the boat ramp, I don't care when it was pretty much empty all the time. And now, over the past 5 years, especially over the past 2 or 3 years, when I go to the lake during the week, the dang ramps are full, absolutely full. So where are these people coming from? It's like, how all of a sudden did you go from an empty boat ramp, like a parking lot with 60 parking spots in it that were empty during the week, to now, you got 50 or 60 boats any day during the week? This is one thing I don't understand about where those people are coming from. So that amount of pressure, contributes to the fishing getting tougher. Another thing with that is the fact that people are better than they've ever been. Largely to do stuff like just with this. You got social media, you got YouTube, you got all these educational tools that are at people's fingertips, the advancements just in rod and reel technology and lure technology. The average bass angler in 2026 is so much more skilled and aware than they've ever been before, and that even puts more pressure on the fish. When you have a large number of anglers that are highly skilled in catching fish. When I started fishing, guys, at tournaments years ago, and I'll equate this to it is right now. When I drew a co-angler, say for example 20 years ago, most of these co-anglers that were in tournaments didn't know hardly nothing about fishing. I had several of them that brought spin casts like Zebco 202s and Zebco 33 spin cast reels that were 2-piece rods, and they'd have one rod as a co-angler. And I've had a lot of guys that didn't really know how to cast. Now you fast forward to 2026, and these co-anglers they're as good as the pros were 20 years ago. They know everything about bass fishing. They all know the details. They know the subtleties. They know how to read water. The amount of knowledge that bass anglers have accumulated specifically over the past 5 years has accelerated the learning curve off the chart. And like I said, it's because of stuff like YouTube. Let me give you a prime example. Back when I started, when I was in my 20s, and I was trying to learn as much as I could about fishing, there was no way to get better in a hurry, because the only thing we had, you either could read magazine articles or you could fish with somebody that was good. And back in the late 70s and early 80s, the magazine articles were worthless, because they were written by these outdoor writers that thought they knew more about fishing than the pros did. And they would write articles on how to rig a Texas rig worm, or, just basic, I'm talking kindergarten level techniques. And that's the only thing that was available. The only way you could learn was fishing with somebody that was really good. And most of those guys didn't want to share their information because they had to work so hard to get it to begin with. So the only way that you could learn about bass fishing was to get on the water yourself and put in the dirt time. if you were fishing, I'll tell you this right now, guys. If you were bass fishing in 1980 and you didn't know much about fishing, it may take you 10 years to learn about a technique on your own. Now you can learn about that technique and master that same technique in 20 minutes watching a YouTube video, because you could see it firsthand. People explain it in detail. They're not trying to hide anything about it. And when it took 10 years to learn a technique 40 years ago, it takes 20 minutes now. Obviously, you have to be able to physically do that on the water, but you can just learn so much more. So you have this acceleration of highly educated anglers that are putting pressure on the fish, that are making the fisheries more tough. And then along with that is, like I said, you cannot deny the effect of forward-facing sonar. Guys, forward-facing sonar has ruined the sport. We talk about it all the time. It is what makes fishing tougher for most of the anglers out there. And what has happened on this is you have had this forward-facing sonar has had this impact on tournaments where it has killed just tens of thousands of bass through bear trauma issues. And then you have a lot of the recreational weekend anglers that have incorporated this technology in a non-tournament setting, and these guys don't throw bass back. They keep them and eat them. So as a result, one of the big reasons that fishing's got so much tougher over the past 10 years is, number one, there's not as many bass. They've been put in the frying pan, or they're laying dead on the bottom of the lake from bear trauma issues. Number two, with that, like I said, we have forced the bass to evolve to be more difficult to catch, and everybody's just better. So these fish that were normally, for the last 100 years on lakes in the country that are around the country, that have traditionally lived in these key areas in less than 20 foot of water, your places like your river channel drops, your creek channel drops, any type of a ledge situation, rock transitions, obvious shoreline structure, those bass are simply not there in the numbers they were before, because the numbers of the bass aren't in the lake. The bass numbers that are in the lake that are creating this sense of this illusion, this artificial sense that the bass fishing is better than what it is, are those fish that live out in the middle of the lake. And here's the thing about it. I always knew those fish were out there, because I've talked to a lot of dudes out there that troll for stripers, like old men back in 1980, and they tell me about some big bass they caught. Or occasionally you'd be out in the middle of the lake in 100 foot of water and you'd see bass come up and busting. I always knew those fish were out there, and nobody could really figure out how to consistently catch them. A few guys could catch them here and there, but we didn't have the technology to get out there to exploit those offshore sanctuaries where most of the bass live in a lake, especially if the lake has got some decent water clarity to it. But now, with the advent of this technology that we have, those bass out there are fair game. And all the bass that have been depleted in the traditional areas in less than 20 foot of water, those fish are gone. The anglers that do not use that technology are the ones that are suffering, because they cannot get out there offshore. They don't want to get out there offshore to catch them with advanced electronic technology. Now, the thing about this is, the problem you have with this is, we don't need to be fishing out there with that technology, because that is like a safety sanctuary area for the fish. Those are places that the bass could go to and get away from the fishing pressure and ensure that we have a brood stock to move forward with repopulating the lake. And as it gets more and more advanced, and as more and more people get better with this technology, that's just going to continue to make the fishing a lot more tough. And even if you're a live scoper, guys, the bass are going to get educated to that. They're going to get educated to that electronic noise, the electronic ping. They're going to get more wary of that stuff. They're going to be getting more, difficult to catch as a result. But the problem you have out there is that the people that are in positions of power in this country to make a change, like the conservation department, the fisheries managers, the tournament organizations, they are so apathetic, and they drag their feet on this, that don't count on them to save the day with it. It's not going to happen. So it can seem really frustrating, at times. The only thing that you can really do, guys, the only thing is to make your voice known in your opposition to this advancing electronic technology. That is what is going to destroy the sport. That's what's going to make it tougher for the average angler to catch fish. And that's why fishing now is tougher than it has ever been, ever. So if you don't believe it, guys, I'll tell you what, if you don't believe this, let's go down. If you go down to a live scope lake like Table Rock Lake or any lake around the country that is live scope heavy, take the live scope away from the anglers and put in their hands some traditional bass fishing lures. In other words, I'll challenge anybody that's a live scoper to do this. You come down to Table Rock Lake any time of the year, and I'm going to give you 3 lures. I'm going to give you a black jig and pork frog. I'm going to give you just a 1/2 ounce white and chartreuse spinner bait, and then I might give you something like a crankbait, something like that. You get out there with no electronic technology, just with a flasher, and you see how many bass you catch with those lures, or maybe like an old Rebel minnow jerk bait or something like that. These are baits that 30, 40 years ago, guys, we caught regularly 20, 25 pound bags down there on. I can promise you guys, you fish a lot of those baits right now down there, you'd be lucky if you catch 1 fish in a day. But they go down there and they ping their minnows out in the middle of the lake for those suspended fish and catch 20 pound bags and think the lake's okay, where if they just turn their back around and tried to fish on the bank, they never get a bite. Eventually that stock is going to get depleted. There's going to continue to be more and more bass die from barotrauma, from tournament forward-facing sonar catches. There's going to be continuing to have more and more bass get put in the frying pan from these guys that are using electronic technology that don't fish tournaments but want to keep and eat bass. So we got a lot of problems ahead of us with that. And I'm just the one that's always, signaling the warning bell with this, because I can see it. I've been there. I've done that. I've seen the evolution. I've seen what has happened to the lakes in my part of the country firsthand. There's probably not another guy watching this YouTube video, for example, that has fished the Ozark lakes as long as I have. And I have seen what has happened over the decades. And if you're somebody that's 25 or 30 years old, you haven't seen crap. You don't have anything to compare it to, what it was like prior to that. But you're probably living in this false sense of reality that since you have the electronic technology and you got all the bait technology and the best that money can buy, that everything is okay, and it's not. It's only obvious to the people that know better, and that's the frustrating thing to it. So anyway, guys, that's why fishing, if you've noticed it, if you've been around a while, I know you know what I'm talking about. Every dude out there that has fished for 20 or 30 years, you know exactly what I'm saying. I don't care if you live on Lake Okeechobee, or if you live on Toledo Bend, or if you live on Clear Lake, or wherever you live. You know what I'm talking about. So anyway, guys, let me know what you think. Shoot me some comments. We'll talk later.